Hello and welcome to the Full 10 Yards Betting Podcast. I am Adam at Touchdown Tips on Twitter. I am joined this week by Liam and Callum as we look at the Easts, the NFC East and the AFC East. We did the AFC North and NFC North last week. You can find that on all good podcatchers. This week we're moving around the compass, and obviously what's next is the Easts. Liam and Callum are here. Callum is a Dolphins fan, so you'll be looking forward to talking us through this one, won't you?
Very much so. It's a weird situation to feel positive heading into a season. So, it's nice to be able to have a smile on my face discussing Miami.
Yep, I completely agree with that. Obviously, last year with the Bengals, it was not a positive income coming into the season, but then it ended very well, and I'm still struggling with it this year. So I hope you reach that kind of feeling for next season. And Liam is a Chiefs fan. We will get onto him in a couple of weeks. Liam, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. I won my only 2 preseason bets at the weekend, so I'm happy with that. The Ravens keep going strong. So, it's been a good week. Looking forward to talking about the East and talk about some tour action with Callum over here.
Yeah, 21 wins in a row in preseason for the Ravens now. They covered the spread once more. They're 19-2 against the spread in that 21 games, which is just an absurd number. I mentioned last week that there was rumours they were going to ease down a bit to try and avoid injuries, but obviously not. We didn't. We had a quick chat before this, and we've not watched a whole lot of preseason games. It's preseason. I don't think there's a whole lot to garner from things. You can get to see things like Antonio Gibson possibly losing his spot, the little notes like that, but that's just what I've been hearing from other places. Overall, from a betting standpoint, overs were 13-3-1 last week, which is quite absurd. We'll see what happens this week. And just a general trend to follow for week 2 of the preseason is 0-1 teams going against 1-0 teams. You're best to back the team that hasn't won yet. The team seems to be a good trend in historical terms. We need to see what's going to happen this week with it being the penultimate game of preseason, whether it will be the kind of trial run or whether teams will still wait for week 3. But obviously keep checking Twitter for that, follow those beat writers and see what they say and get on quick if you see any news. Unfortunately, over here, we do struggle with that because obviously news comes generally 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, which is a bit of an issue, but there is money to be made if you can. Talking of money to be made, I did forget about the Full 10 Yards guide. It is out very, very soon. You can go to full10yards.com/guides with an S on the end. Use code FULL10 for a 10% discount on those. I ordered mine the other week because the profits go towards helping the game in the UK. So it's all for a good cause and people have put in a ton of work. I know just from the betting standpoint, we have put in hours ourselves and that's just a small part of it. So if you can support, then do. On to the AFC East. I was going to start with the Bills, but I've been talking for quite a while now, so I'll go with the Dolphins and let Callum talk for a while. Callum, why are the Dolphins going to win the division?
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves there. Just briefly on what you're saying about picking up the news, and technically AFC East related. As soon as I heard the Zach Wilson injury, obviously my time zone kind of works a little bit better than you guys for that. So I was still very much awake and alive when Zach Wilson went down. And I immediately went everywhere online to try and find Jimmy G to the Jets odds. And couldn't find him anywhere, which was very disappointing. I thought I was ahead of the game, but not to be. Anyway, yes. As far as the Dolphins go, it's probably the most positive off-season that I can remember in kind of 15 years of being a fan, basically. For the first time in literally 20 years, we have a legit superstar player who Liam is very kindly wearing a tribute to on his chest right now. And to have a player like Tyreek Hill, obviously there's been off the field issues and things like that we don't love, but talent-wise, absolutely incredible. And you have to hope that he'll be able to replicate some of his Kansas City production in Miami. Now, again, Tyreek has come out and said some ridiculous things comparing Tua and Mahomes. I think we all should be able to understand that basically you can't show up in a new place with your new best mate and be like, well, my other guy, he was a lot better before. So I understand completely why Hill has been defending Tua. And I'd like to believe that Tua can be the guy. But I do think winning the division is probably a step too far, if we're honest. Looking at the odds on screen now, there's a reason why the Bills are 1-2 favorites. There's a reason why Bills are favorites for the Super Bowl. They have pretty much everything you need on a roster, and also that sense of injustice from last season against Kansas City. Not that the Chiefs did anything wrong, but the frustration of never having had a chance to try and win that game in overtime. I think Buffalo, and we'll come to them shortly, but I think they're in line for a massive season. But yes, as far as Miami goes, the signing of Armstead was huge. Really kind of a star on the line to try and help out, protect Tua. And then I really like what McDaniel, as the new head coach, has kind of come in and done. All the players seem to love him. He's very much a laid-back, relaxed kind of guy, but in a way that kind of empowers players to be themselves, I think. The wide receiver core that we've built, with Waddle, with Hill, with Cedric Wilson, who I think is a really underrated pickup, who had a really good season in Dallas last year. And adding him as well, I think, is a really nice addition to the squad. Obviously, Mike Gesicki with this kind of franchise tag situation is an interesting one. And then we're kind of playing Pokemon with running backs. We're just trying to collect them all. With, Sony Michel coming in, Raheem Mostert back again, Chase Edmonds as well. And that'll be a really interesting situation. I would like to suggest that I think probably the best way to go about it is have Mostert as the supposed starter, with Edmonds getting more of the passing down work. But they've also brought Sony Michel in and paid him a decent amount. So I think you might see a San Francisco-esque carousel of running backs, which obviously I hate for fantasy purposes. But if it leads the Dolphins to wins, I like. I think it would also make for intriguing betting lines on running back props, because I think you'll find that a lot of the lines will be quite low, and maybe you just need one of the three guys to pop one big run and you'd get the over, if that makes sense. But equally, you could argue there's value in the under if they're going to be splitting time. I certainly would probably stay away from kind of rushing touchdown props for those players, because I think you just have no idea right now who's likely to get goal line work. And obviously Myles Gaskin is still kind of in the huddle, I guess. But yeah, as far as the Dolphins go, it really is kind of Tua's time to put up or shut up, really. I was going into this season saying whatever happened will be okay, because if Tua doesn't turn into the guy, we still have 2 first-round picks to go and get someone. And then our owner was an idiot, and now we only have 1 first-round pick. So now it kind of has to be Tua, because I do think this roster and Tua, barring a severe spate of injuries, the lowest amount of games they would be able to win is 7 or 8, really. And that means you're not going to get an elite quarterback unless you want to mortgage the house next draft. So, yeah, I want Tua to be the guy. I believe Tua can be the guy, but he really has to be the guy right now. And it'll be interesting to see how he develops. The opening to the season is a really interesting one, because obviously it's Patriots week 1. Tua is currently undefeated against the Patriots, which is not a sustainable record by any means, because Belichick will find a way to take revenge at some point. And I know obviously we've got the Bengals in week 4. I'm in a situation where I feel like for the Dolphins, the absolute floor is an 7-10 season. If it goes absolutely terrible, I still think we could win 7 games. But it's really hard to see a ceiling higher than 10-7. And that in itself is a really complicated situation, because I think we will absolutely have to win 10 games to get a wild card spot in the playoffs in the AFC. And we're going to have to beat one of the perennial playoff contenders in order to do it. You got to beat a playoff team to get into the playoffs for sure. But I'd like to say I feel positive about the Dolphins. I would be stunned if the Dolphins weren't second in this division. That's what I'll say. I think the Dolphins are clearly better than both the Patriots and the Jets. And to say that about New England makes me very, very warm and happy inside.
Yeah, that start to the season is pretty rough. I think if you want to bet the Dolphins to do stuff, do it before week 5. You got Patriots, Ravens, Bills, Bengals for the first 4 games. And then they have a horrible 4-game stretch later in the season as well. 49ers, Chargers, Bills, and Packers. But yeah, I reckon take Dolphins to make the playoffs before the Jets game in week 5. And you're probably going to get some fairly decent odds on that if it's a bit of a rough start to them. For me, like I really don't know what's going to happen with the Dolphins. It's all on Tua, basically, isn't it? It's Tua and the offensive line, which they have addressed to an extent, but not majorly. They've brought in a couple of guys, but it was very poor last year, and he was running for his life a lot. The defense obviously is pretty good. I think it will stay decent enough, even with Flores gone. He was obviously the head coach, but he was a defensive head coach, so I assume he had a fairly big input on the defense. So we'll see what happens there. But Liam, any comment on the Dolphins?
Yeah, I'll start with the comment that Callum made about the running backs. That I agree. I think with that amount of running backs, because I think they've got Ahmed as well still on the roster at the moment. So there's like 6 running backs. They only keep 4 because San Francisco usually keep 4. So I imagine Mike McDaniel have the same view. But I think early in the season, they're going to be priced completely wrong. Every year, the bookies price San Francisco running backs wrong. So even for like first touchdown or to score any touchdown or overs, they're normally priced wrong. So whoever the least favorite is always a good bet in the first couple of weeks. And then you'll see after 3-4 weeks who the goal line favorite is, and the bookies will adjust. So I think there's a market there. In terms of the team, I really like Armstead as a sign-in. I would rather if you have an elite right tackle with a left-handed quarterback, obviously, but I still think having any elite tackles is a hell of an upgrade on what the team had last year. So I think he'll make a big difference. The problem is, will he play enough games? Just because I know that he's been kind of hampered with injuries the last 2 seasons. So I think if you're a fan of him or a fan of the team, then you definitely want him to be healthy this season. In terms of Tua, I actually probably like Tua more than a lot of people, especially people that criticize the Dolphins as much as I feel like they get. But he's actually a relatively good downfield passer. I think that's kind of overlooked, that people think he can't throw the deep ball. He can, but the problem is he needs good protection to be able to manage the pocket and throw it down the field. That's his issue. He can't just sit there like Josh Allen or Herbert or Mahomes and just sling it. He has to be in a perfect base to throw the ball. So I think if the offensive line's good, you'll see those receivers play really, really well. And just a note on their defense as well, I think their secondary is probably one of the best in the league. I'm a big fan of Javon Holland, who's a up-and-coming safety. So I think their defense has got a chance to be one of the best units. And if Tua's good, then I think second division is probably the ceiling, but second division with 11 wins is probably the highest they'll get. And I agree that 6-7 wins is probably the floor for this team, I think.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I think from looking, but obviously before anything happens, I would assume Sonny Michel would be goal line back, and Mostert would be the one I would look at for. Obviously, he's one of the quickest players in the league once he gets free, so he'd be the one I look for on the overs and over on longest rush for him if they offer it. I mean, there's a chance that they just don't risk it, but as Liam said, with touchdown scorers, it's probably best off taking whoever the lowest is on that one. On to the Bills. The Bills are 1-2 favourites. They are 13-2 best price for the Super Bowl. They are the favourites for the Super Bowl as well. As Callum pointed out, they lost that thriller to the Chiefs last year in overtime, which they should have won. It was the punt at the end of the game which cost them, or a kick. Yeah, he punted and gave them the chance to break out instead of put into the end zone, I believe. They may well have gone on to win it after that. And as Callum said, they have everything in place. They've got solid lines on both sides of the ball. They've got Josh Allen, who is one of the better dual threat QBs in the league. They got Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, who is very, very hyped up at the moment after the 4 touchdowns he scored in that game. I don't think he's going to be that impressive, but he's obviously pretty damn good. Jameson Crowder, they brought in for the slot position, and Isaiah McKenzie has been getting really good reviews in camp as well. He seems to have a good combination with Allen, which is useful. The run game, I'm not entirely sure on. Singletary did really well in the playoffs last year, but his regular season wasn't exactly brilliant. And then they've got Zach Moss, and they drafted Dalvin Cook's brother, James Cook, as well. So I think they're going to mix that one up a bit. The defense is obviously pretty good. Tre'Davious White, I don't think is going to be back for the start of the season. I'm sure someone can tell me different on that. He's a big loss, but they brought in Von Miller up front, which is really very useful. And Ed Oliver should make a big step forward after his rookie year last year. I think Bills 1-2 is probably the best bet one of the best bets of any of them, frankly. They should have won more than, I think, 11 games they won last year. I think they should have got more than that. And I believe their win total was 10.5, 11 this year, which they are going to be around. They have a pretty decent schedule as well. They are favoured for every single game after the bye week. So start of the season a little tougher. End of the season, they should be coasting by then. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I love the Bills this year, frankly. it's difficult not to, and it's going to be them getting in their own way, I think, which will be the issue. So we'll see what happens. Liam, what do you reckon?
Yeah, going back to their strength of schedule, it's quite rare for a team as good as they were. I think they only won 10 or 11 games last year because that silly Jags loss where they scored like 6 points or something, or 9 points. I can't remember what it was now. Yeah, it was ridiculous. But yeah, for as a kind of 1 seed potential goes, they're quite up there just because their strength of schedule is relatively easy. I think it's 19th in the league against, if you look at Vegas win totals that they've got. So pretty much the same as the Dolphins near enough. So I think the schedule is going to help them a lot. I'm there completely on Josh Allen. I think he's the second best quarterback in the league. And his rushing potential. We'll see what they do. I do think they might run him less in the regular season because we did see him come out and say that he wants to run less to start the season because he's still dealing with injuries from last season. He's been banged up. I know he had a couple of rib injuries, so I think that he'll run a bit less. But then will James Cook make a difference? I'm not sure if I'm going to see in the first probably 5-6 weeks. In terms of the rest of the team, the defense is really good. I think White might miss a couple of games to start the season at most, and then he should be back. Von Miller still got it to rush the passer. I like Rousseau as well, who they obviously drafted last year. He's a really, really good edge rusher. But I'm really worried about their offensive line. So in terms of win the Super Bowl, I don't think there's value in that. I'm going to be biased because my best friend in the world is a Bills fan. And obviously, the Chiefs and Bills seem to play each other every year, and we always beat them in the playoffs. But I'd be worried about their offensive line. Apart from Deion Dawkins and Mitch Morse, the other 3 players in the starting unit aren't going to be very good, in my opinion. And wide receiver too, I'm with you that I think Gabe Davis is probably overhyped. So unless Khalil Shakur plays well, I just think for me, the offense will be great because of the coach and the quarterback, but I'm not quite as high on them to win the Super Bowl. But I think division bet is pretty safe, to be honest.
Yeah, I've been loading up on the Bills on my £5 free bets from William Hill. I've got I'm on 59 £5 free bets at the moment, and the Bills take up about 30. Sorry, probably not 30. They probably take about 15 of them.
How have you got 59 free bets?
Because William Hill do scratch it a day, and over the summer it was bet 10 quid on football, get a free £5 bet, and things like that. So I was building my book using those free bets, and yeah, I'm up to 59 now, and I think the Bills have got 15, 20 of them at 13-2 because I figured that they will probably shorten in price. So get in while I could.
You've got more patience than I would have because I think I'd have been spending £10 on football and then spending that £5 free bet on football as well. So I agree with everything.
There's a few fivers that went towards other stuff, but yeah, most of them I was trying to keep a tenner in there specifically for that. Sorry, carry on.
No, I think my first ever futures bet I won this summer was England women to win the Euros. So yeah, I'm with you there. Yes. It was a happy summer, all things considered. Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything the two of you have said on the Bills. I'm a little bit higher on Gabriel Davis than the two of you are. I think he is actually a talented receiver, and my dynasty shares in him certainly hope so. But yeah, I think the Bills are the clear pick of the litter here. Josh Allen is just a different class to most quarterbacks in the league. I think, Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Burrow, Herbert. I mean, the 5 of those in the AFC for, decades to come, barring any trades that would be blockbuster. It's insane, really, the caliber of quarterback that's probably going to go through their career Super Bowl-less, realistically, because it's just hard to see a way where each one of them wins one, realistically. You know how these things happen. So, yeah, I mean, you're really in a situation where those 5 guys are absolute superstars. And I think if you don't have one of those guys, winning the AFC is a pipe dream, really. I can't see, as much as I'd love Tua to be that guy, as much as I really like what the Colts have done in bringing in Matt Ryan, I just don't think without one of those 5 quarterbacks, you're going to win the AFC this season or for a while to come. So yeah, I'm a big Josh Allen guy. I know I'm not supposed to like the Bills, but I find them eminently likable as a franchise. Really, I think, to be honest, the whole AFC is pretty much just everyone versus New England, AFC East, is everyone versus New England, which I kind of enjoy, that we've enjoyed our suffering together, and now we're cheering for Buffalo and putting the boot to the Patriots.
Yeah, much like the Premier League and your team. The non-United fans are reveling in the chance to watch them be terrible at the moment. But yeah, talking of the Patriots, the Patriots are third in the betting for the division, a 5-1 best price for them. Again, there's not a huge amount of negatives or positives. They are the Patriots after Tom Brady. Mac Jones looked decent enough in his rookie year. They kept it fairly simple for him, opened it up a bit towards the end of the season. I believe from what I've been listening to and what I've been hearing, they are trying a new scheme this year. I think it's zone blocking instead of man blocking, something like that. It's not my expertise. But yeah, it sounds like that's been kind of up and down in camp, but this is the time to do it. And if it works, it works, which will be very useful for them. Mac Jones apparently is bulked up over the summer, which is obviously useful, and coming into second year rookies tend to, because they're on a full NFL diet and NFL off season, which makes sense. They've brought in Devontae Parker from the Dolphins to help with the wide receiver group, but it's still not great. Jacoby Myers finally scored a touchdown last year. I think he finished with a couple. Nelson Aguilar, they brought him in. He might not make the roster. They brought in Tyquan Thornton in the draft, who has been looking fairly decent. And last week I had a quick look at their preseason things, and they had a guy, I think, messed it up now. There was a guy who played a couple of games in the regular season last year who came from nowhere, who looks like he had a fairly decent preseason game. And Gunnar Olszewski played all right as well, if he's still there, or maybe he moved. The running backs are pretty decent 1-2 punch. Damian Harris got most of the carries last year. Ramondre Stevenson looked good in what he got. He's probably going to take the James White role now that James White has retired, which means more pass catching for him. And frankly, I thought he looked the better of the two in the work that he got, but we'll see what happens. And on defense, they're having a bit of a revamp. They've lost a few of the older heads. They're bringing in the youth a bit more. So we'll see what happens with that. But it's always tough to overlook the Patriots because of what they do year on year. Roster-wise, I don't think they're the strongest, but they're going to be 8, 9, 10 wins. They always are. They always seem to find a way because Bill Belichick's a genius. What do you guys reckon?
Yeah, I'm with you on the Bill Belichick being a genius and managing to make wine almost out of water, it feels like. But yeah, it's probably the worst roster, I think. I know there was that 2011 was it or 10 roster that wasn't great. They managed to win 10 games with in the regular season, but I think this might be the worst roster. I thought last year was going to be the worst roster, and then they kind of decided to not pay JC Jackson, which I thought was the wrong decision. They decided to trade their best offensive lineman to the Bucs just to help Tom out. I do think it was a bit of a weird offseason for them. And it's kind of the first time I've looked at their defense in a long time and been like, I actually think their defense could be bad. The problem with that statement is the coach of the defense is the greatest defensive coach of all time. So they probably won't actually be bad, but I do think compared to previous years, where especially against passing offenses, they normally do relatively well on. I think this could be a bit of a down year. In terms of the offense, the offensive line is still actually good. It's their strength for their team, even though they got rid of Shaq Mason. Tight end room is good. They overpaid for one of them, whichever one ends up being the second tight end. They overpaid for him. But the receiver room is not good. And in terms of the quarterback, I like Mac Jones. He played better than Zach Wilson and Tua last year. Is he better than both of them? I don't think so for me, but he played better last year. So if he improves again, then I think the offense has a chance to be league average. And then they need Bill to work some magic with some special teams and some defense. But yeah, we'll see. I think they're the clear third team for me, and that's just because of how good the coaching is, because the roster's probably the worst in the division, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, if Zach Wilson isn't injured, I think there's a way that the Patriots could finish bottom of this division, to be completely honest. I really don't think this roster is talented at all, and this is not me being clouded by my anti-Patriots syndrome, shall we say. I was stunned at the plaudits Mac Jones got last year. I didn't think he was as good as people were saying that he was, and not that he couldn't become that player, but I don't see him becoming the second iteration of Tom Brady that people were kind of suggesting he could become when they drafted him. He's got nothing around him to his defense. I can't really believe that, as much as I like Devontae Parker in Miami, he's a second option at best. Yeah. I don't think that Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, Parker, Thornton is obviously speedy, but we've seen what really fast guys have done in the NFL sometimes. Like John Ross has kind of just flamed out and not really become that guy. So we'll see if Thornton. Sorry, I don't know. I apologize. We'll see if Thornton can actually turn into a contributor. The two best weapons on that offense, as far as I'm concerned, are the tight ends in Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. And really, I think they should be run game heavy and pass to the tight end heavy, if that makes sense. I think you'll see a lot of 5-yard routes. I think you'll see the Patriots. It would not surprise me if they were bottom of the league in explosive plays, shall we say? I don't see them being a game-breaking team. I'm a big Damian Harris fan. I like him a lot. I think he's a good running back. Stevenson obviously getting a lot of hype. We'll see how he develops, but I think that will probably end up being another timeshare, which for all us fantasy players is disgusting. But yeah, I don't think the Patriots are good, to be frank with you. And it's so risky saying this, because it is Bill Belichick, and we're saying all these things. But I look at the Patriots' schedule, and I really do think that they are kind of in trouble in terms of finding ways to win games. I'm going to say that I think they're going to lose to the Dolphins in week 1. They've got the Ravens in week 3. They've got the Packers in week 4. They've got the Browns in week 5. But I think they've got a lot of tough non-division games, including, they've got the Colts, Cardinals, your Bengals, Adam. I mean, I really do think that the Patriots will struggle to have a winning season here. I would like to bet on them not to make the playoffs. That would be my fairly safe tip. I don't see there being a way that the Patriots have a route into the postseason this year.
They got Matt Patricia as well as OC, which none of us have mentioned yet. So that's probably
it's because he's not officially the OC. That's why he's just there.
Call him plays potentially. Joe Judge as well.
He will most definitely be doing that job. 8-13 is for them to not make the playoffs, which is fairly decent. Christian Wilkerson was the wide receiver I was scratching for before, and Gunnar Olszewski did move. He moved to the Steelers, but I saw his name the other day and saw that he had a fairly decent game, so that was why I picked that one out. I find it tough that they will finish bottom of the division just because the Jets, who we will now move on to, they have a hideous schedule this year. I don't know how it happened that they finished 4th in division and then got the worst schedule out of the whole division, but it did. I was mildly positive on them coming in before I looked at that, and then I looked and I thought they're not going to win 5 games. And then if Zach Wilson is likely to miss 2 to 4 weeks apparently now with his PCL, which is not as bad as it was, not as bad as the ACL that was people thought it was a lot better. Apparently there's not a huge amount of difference between him and Joe Flacco though, so it'll be interesting to. That's what they've been saying in camp. That's not my opinion. That's just what they've been saying.
That's not good for Zach.
No, not at all. Not at all. But that's apparently what they've been saying. But the Jets apparently won the offseason. They won the draft. They won the things like that. And they've put players around Zach Wilson. Unlike the Bears that we mentioned last week, they bought in Garrett Wilson. They drafted Sauce Gardner and Johnson in the first round with their picks, who were all highly rated at their own positions. They've lost Mekhi Becton, which is he would have been a big man on their offensive line. They were without him last year, but they were. It seemed really positive for him coming into this. So it's a bit of a shame. They do have Carl Lawson back, who I think is brilliant as a pass rusher. So they'll be hoping he stays fit. But yeah, on the offense, they have Garrett Wilson. They've got Corey Davis, Elijah Moore. Sorry. It looks like he's going to be the wide receiver 1. He seems to have had a fairly good camp. They brought in CG Uzama from the Bengals as well, who is an adequate tight end. And they drafted Breece Hall as well in the second round, who looks like he'll get the bulk of carries with Michael Carter second choice. It's just their schedule for me is what's going to stop them doing anything of note this year. They are favourite in 3 games this year, and they're all after the bye. Their pre-bye schedule is Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Steelers, Dolphins, Packers, Broncos, Patriots, Bills. That's going to be a struggle for 2 wins. It's going to be really rough for them, which is a bit of a shame because I do rate Robert Saleh. I think they'll be decent, but It's just that they're coming up against teams who are too good for them at the moment, in my opinion.
So what I meant was, on paper, they could be the third best team in the division. On paper. I love what the Jets did in the offseason. I think their draft was fantastic. The depth they added. And like you said, Adam, I really do like Robert Saleh. I know all the teams now kind of put out their YouTube videos, the YouTube series is behind the draft and everything. But I watched the Jets one, Take Flight, I think it was called. And it was really, really good. And it looks like, Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh are on the same page. They're going out and getting their guys. There's a good buzz in that building. I love Sauce Gardner. I love what they did in getting Garrett Wilson and even Jermaine Johnson as well. Seeing someone go from last chance use to the NFL like that is fantastic. I think the Jets are building in the right direction. Zach Wilson, I do think, again, is a good quarterback. So you really have to hope that this injury is short term. I think he will continue to develop in that offense. I think we all know what Joe Flacco is. That Jets-Browns game with Joe Flacco versus Jacoby Brissett could be the most boring quarterback play ever.
Low scoring game, I guarantee that.
I think it might be a field goal shootout, really, if we're honest. So yeah, that'll be an interesting one. But I like the Jets, and I think they've got a bright future in this division. But yes, probably not this year to make any waves in terms of challenging Miami or the Bills nearer the top.
Yeah, I agree. When you look at the strength of schedule, I think in terms of what was it in the league ranking, it's 27th out of 32 teams. They're the only team to ever finish bottom of their division and get a bottom 10 schedule, basically since this metric has been kept. I don't know how it happened either. I would have to spend more time looking at it, but I don't probably want to spend my time doing that. But it is strange for how bad it is. I know their divisions they're up against really hard this year, which obviously does make a difference. And their own division is probably stronger because, like we said, Patriots are always relatively good, and then the other two teams have got one's got a great roster and one's got a really good roster, so that probably doesn't help. But the schedule's not great. I think for me, I agree with Callum that the draft was incredible. I wasn't a huge Garrett Wilson guy, but in terms of improving their team, he's definitely done that. Breece Hall was a good pick in terms of the player. I don't like the value, but that's just running backs. And it was a bit strange how he was the second for the snaps in preseason. They started Michael Carter, which was a bit odd after saying all week they were going to start the starters. They started Michael Carter, and then they started the rest of the offensive line as starters. So we'll see what that means. But they replaced Becton with Dwayne Brown, who was the Seattle Seahawks left tackle last year. Gave him a 2-year deal with $22 million. So it looks like they probably think he's going to have to play for 2 seasons. I don't know what that tells us about Mekhi Becton. I don't think that's great for him. I think you could see him either be a guard or be a swing tackle at best, potentially, if that's the case. But the defense is good. I like Carl Lawson. I really, really like John Franklin Myers as well, who they paid in the offseason. And the secondary is good. Very young in parts, but it's good. So, on paper, good team, but with a quarterback that's going to start injured and an OC for me that I'm not quite sure about, I just worry they're going to score enough points against a really, really hard schedule.
Yeah, I just looked their fourth place teams were the Broncos and the Seahawks. So that kind of the Broncos especially are 10 plus wins according to the bookies. So obviously that didn't help them. And then AFC and NFC North is not the easiest divisions to be playing against. So they did get a little shafted with that this year. But we will see what happens. What was your guys' best bet for the division?
Patriots to miss the playoffs, to be honest with you. I just think that there's no way I see them finding a way to be in a wild card spot in the AFC. So not exactly free money, but feels pretty close.
I don't normally like to do this precise of a bet, but you can get 10-3 on the exact order to be Bills, Dolphins, Pats, and Jets. And I know that's very chalky, but I felt like that was priced wrong. And then I also like Zach Wilson for most interceptions at 9-1. You probably need him to only miss 2 games to hit that number. If he misses 4 or 5 games, he's probably not going to play enough to win. But if he only misses 1 or 2 weeks, I think with that schedule, he could probably lead the league in interceptions. And I also wrote down take Josh Allen unders, but I don't want to wish injury on anyone. But I'll say take Josh Allen unders just because of how much he can run as the season goes on.
Yeah, I probably should shy away from my best bet for the division, which was Josh Allen over 6.5 rushing touchdowns, 17-20 on Unibet. He's had 9, 8, 9, and 6 in his 4 years in Buffalo. And as I say, like the run game is muddy at best, is kind of all over the place, and we know he will run, he will try and not to, but it's difficult.
I think he might run more in the red zone because it's high leverage, isn't it, to score touchdowns. I just don't think you'll see him on like when it's those 3rd and 4s and he just tries to run it for a first down, then they go for it again on 4th and 1 and he runs it. I just think we'll see less of that, but yeah, I still think he's probably a safe bet for Russian TDs.
Yeah, so on to the NFC East then. It's been a very long time since the NFC East was retained by anyone. I've got written down here 15 years. I think it might be a little longer, to be honest. The Cowboys obviously won it last year, and one of the hype teams of the offseason are looking like they could be favourites very soon for it this year, the Eagles. They have been talked about a heck of a lot this year. The Cowboys have weakened. They lost... Well, we'll get onto them in a minute. I'll leave that for it. Basically, the Cowboys are 7-5 for it. The Eagles 9-5. The Washington Commanders are 6-1, and the Giants are 8-1 to win the NFC East this year. I personally think that it's one team only, but we'll get onto that. So, Liam, what do you reckon of the Cowboys? We'll start with them because they won it last year.
Yeah, weird off season for them. A lot of people were saying last year that their offense was the most dangerous offense on paper, anyway, in the league, and I probably agreed with them on paper in terms of weapons. I know it's never great when Mike McCarthy's doing like third, because even though he doesn't call the plays, he calls third down apparently, or did last year. So that's probably why they were bad on third down. But yeah, this year, if you look at it, for me, I think it's strange their off season. They let Lyle Collins go to your Bengals. And I think that's strange. I can't understand why you wouldn't keep him.
He's not actually participated in training yet, which is a bit of a worry with back issues. But that could have been why, but I'm hoping not. But we'll see.
Yeah, well, he had a back issue last year as well, so yeah, potentially why. But yeah, he's a good player, and obviously Amari Cooper was the one. I know that trade probably looks worse now because of what everyone got for Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill. But I thought they should have kept him. I do like Jane Tolbert, who they got in the draft, but he's like wide receiver 3 for me in a good offense. And I just think that they're really limited on options without Amari Cooper. The defense as well. Obviously, Randy Gregory was re-signed and then not re-signed and ended up going to Denver because they offered him more money last minute. So that was another kind of typical Cowboys move. And then they just got in as many ex-Dan Quinn players as they possibly can throughout the rest of the roster. So yeah, I think they had a bad offseason. And also, if you look at Cowboys history, if they have a good year, they usually follow it up with a bad year. But personally, I think Dak Prescott is an elite quarterback. I would like to see a year without him getting injured, especially ankle injuries. That seems to happen all the time now. But I think if he's fit for the whole season, they're still going to run this division close because he is a true elite quarterback. But if he's not, or CD goes down, I think the offense could just really struggle to score enough points. So yeah, a very strange offseason for them, and I could see why a lot of people don't have them winning the division now.
Yeah, I struggle with Dak because he shows a lot, but I feel like he needs everything perfect around him. I think when there's been offensive line issues in the past before, he's fallen off a bit, which is understandable, but it's a critique that's used against a lot of QBs, and Dak seems immune from it. I do think he struggled coming back from injury last year, so he should run a lot more this year. Last year, he seemed to be shying away from running, which was a huge part of his game. So it will be interesting to see how he goes this year. Michael Gallup looks like he's probably not going to be ready for week 1. James Washington's obviously out for the season. He wasn't very good anyway, but he's missing. So yeah, Jalen Tolbert's there, and Semi Fehoko, I think, is probably wide receiver 3 or 4. He's getting close to where they shouldn't be. Obviously, as Callum said, they let Cedric Wilson go to the Dolphins, who would have been a fairly vital part of their offense right now. They still got Zeke and Pollard. Zeke was playing through I think it was PCL he was struggling with last year that he kept playing through, and his numbers declined significantly after that injury. So for me personally, I quite like Zeke. I think, or I'm hoping he will get the lion's share of the carries still, and I'm hoping he'll look good. But Pollard looked really good last year in the work that he got. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of split they have this year. I think it'll be pretty much the same, but Pollard is one I've been picking up late in drafts just because of that. Defense, they have Micah Parsons, who's fairly short to win Defensive Player of the Year. He was electric last year. I wouldn't say he changed the position, but he gave a significant bump to the linebackers position because he was playing all over the place, and he got double-digit sacks. I think he had tons of tackles. He looked really good. Trayvon Diggs, I don't know what to think of. He started on fire, making interceptions, but then he got pulverized in the second half of the year. Teams were targeting him because they knew he was going to bite, and they were just throwing past him. So it'll be interesting to see how the defense goes. It's quite highly rated, but I'm not entirely convinced with it. I think that it's going to be interesting for them. I mean, this division is going to be interesting. They've all got a fairly soft schedule, not just because they're playing each other, but because it's just the way it's ended. So I think they'll all do fairly well. Is whichever one wins the division games, and we'll see what happens with that. Callum?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. There's only one way that this division goes, and that's the Cowboys winning this division, for sure, 100%. I totally agree with what you guys have said. I like the Eagles, and we'll come on to them, and I do think the Eagles have improved and will be a good team. I think it will be kind of a shootout to the end between the Cowboys and the Eagles, but I do just think the Cowboys' quality and depth is there. Gallup will be back in time to make an impact. If I was Jerry Jones, though, I would be driving a truckload of cash to wherever Odell Beckham Jr. is right now and picking him up as a wide receiver, because not only will you sell 1 billion OBJ shirts, not only do you get 2 OBJ versus the Giants revenge games, but I also think he would really, really help this team just in having another threat out wide. I love CeeDee Lamb. I think he's fantastic. I think he really will be a superstar receiver in this league. And yeah, I am someone who believes in Dak. I do think Dak is good. I think it's really harsh to judge this entire Cowboys franchise on one game, which it feels like everybody is doing with the loss to the 49ers last year. Now, on paper, I will go to my grave saying the Cowboys should have won that game. I really strongly believe that, and it was extremely disappointing that they didn't. That said, the Niners are no mugs. There's a reason they made it to the NFC Championship game. There's a reason why Kyle Shanahan is the coach he is. And I really think I can see the Cowboys kind of fighting back with some vengeance this year, trying to prove people wrong. I'm not this anti-Mike McCarthy guy that a lot of people seem to be. I don't think he's the best coach in the league, but you don't win a Super Bowl being a bad coach. It just, as much as Aaron Rodgers can carry you to an extent, you have to have something there. So I have to believe that the Cowboys can continue to be successful in this division, though, like we said, no one ever retains it. So maybe the Eagles is the smart money, but if you had a gun to my head and I had to choose, I would still be putting my trust in Dak, Zeke, Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, and those boys, rather than a slightly less proven Eagles team.
I can't argue with that analysis. I am going to, because I think the Eagles are going to win the division. But I appreciate the analysis, and I can't, as I say, I agree with it to an extent. It's just that I mean, it's tough not to be down on the Cowboys, because they are the bigger team in the NFL. Frankly, they're the most followed team, so they are the Man United of the NFL, and it's nice to root against them. But we should be a pretty good season. Like I quite like 3 of the teams in the NFC East this year, which is something I can't normally say. I didn't say I like them to win the Super Bowl. I just quite like them. Like, I think they're going to be entertaining, 3 of them. But yeah, the Eagles are the hyped team of the offseason. They have done pretty decent work. They've got one of the best defensive and offensive lines in the league. I think they're both rated as top 10 units. They bought in AJ Brown, obviously a huge trade, paid a fortune for him. Pairing him up with Devonta Smith, who's one of the best duos in the league, potentially, possibly alongside Miami, possibly alongside the Bengals. And then Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell in the run game's pretty darn decent behind a very good offensive line, as I said. So essentially, it all comes down to Jalen Hurts, is whether he can prove himself a good enough quarterback. He's shown bits. He's obviously very mobile, and he's shown he can throw the ball pretty well in sections. It's him proving he can do it on for a whole season and piecing it all together. They do have a very nice schedule, the Eagles. They start with the Lions, Vikings, Commanders, I nearly said the word we're not meant to, Jaguars, Cardinals, and Dallas. I think they could easily go into their bye week at 6-0. It's a very winnable first 6 games, and then you're flying from there. So yeah, I admit I think the Eagles will win the division. I've took them at better odds than they are now, and I think they're going to continue to shorten in odds. So if you want to get on them, I think now's the time, and you'll get a little bit of CLV at least. But yeah, Liam, what do you reckon?
Yeah, second easiest schedule in the league, I think, which does really make a difference. I know we said the whole division is quite easy. I think Eagles is something like what number are they? Cowboys are like 10, and then the other teams are all better than that. But yeah, Eagles second easiest, Giants who will come on to easiest. So I think the schedule really helps them. People kind of forget because of how bad that Bucs game was for Jalen Hurts, because it was bad. They forget that they made their playoffs with a much kind of worse roster than they've got as we sit here today. Yeah. They do get a lot of injuries because they've got probably top 3 offensive line in the league, maybe. Really good defensive line, but there are a lot of older players on those lines. So they do suffer a lot of injuries. That's kind of been the bugbear for them for the last 2 seasons. But if healthy for the majority of the season, their lines are really, really good. And like you said, they've had a really good offseason. I love the draft as well. Getting the 2 Georgia guys in there, the 2 Bulldogs, that will probably play a lot of snaps for them, I think it's really going to help. I quite like Jalen Hurts. He's improved every year he's played. Even if anyone who likes college football, he was terrible his first year in college football, and he really does get better every year. So if he takes another leap forward, even if it's a small one, I think their offense will be good. I think he'll run the ball a lot. I think they'll run the ball a lot, and I think they'll get a lot of explosive plays from the 2 outside receivers. So yeah, I do like their team as well. I don't want to say this. Obviously, Mike McCarthy's in the division, who I don't like, but I'm still not sure if Sirianni is going to be an elite head coach either. So I'd worry about that. I'd worry about that on 3rd and 4th down. I think last year they called some really strange plays on 3rd and 4th down where they were running up the gut with like 4 yards to go, and I'd be worried if they do that again. But we'll see. But yeah, a really good roster, good summer. We'll just see if Jalen Hurts can win enough games for them.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the Eagles. I think what they did in the offseason is very impressive. I mean, I think we were all enjoying the draft night trade that they made. And, I think A.J. Brown is a good player, though I don't think A.J. Brown is in that elite tier of wide receivers. I think he is just kind of just below that. I would certainly, if you offered me a player-for-player comparison, I would put DK Metcalf in that elite tier, though he's going to have a questionable quarterback situation this year, and I'd put AJ Brown just a little bit below that. I do like Jalen Hurts, and I do think the Eagles will be a very good team. I think, contrary to what Adam is peddling, I think there's a clear 2 good teams in this division and 2 awful teams in this division. So we'll have to see how that works out. But yeah, I like the Eagles. I could see them being a wild card team again. Like you said, they made the playoffs last year with a bad roster, and this NFC is terrible most of the way down in terms of depth in the actual conference. Looking at their schedule, I remember last week I said the Lions were going to start 5-0, so I'm going to stick with that and have the Lions beating the Eagles in week 1. I think the Eagles will beat the Vikings in week 2. They'll beat the Commanders in week 3. They'll beat the Jaguars in week 4. So they'd be 3-1, but then I think they lose back-to-back games to the Cardinals and the Cowboys. So after 6 games, I can see them being 3-3. I don't see 6-0 by any means, but I do think it is a kind schedule. You've got games against the Commanders and the Giants again. You've got the Texans. You've got the Bears, who are the worst team in the league. I do think the Eagles will sneak in as a wild card, but I do still think the Cowboys hold the kind of hoodoo over them in head-to-head matchups as they did last year.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting challenge between those 2. I say that I like 3 teams in the division. I don't think the 3rd one is going to challenge. I'm weirdly high on the Giants, and I really.
Okay. Sorry. That was me thinking you were going Commanders, and I was going to slay you. But okay. Great. No. The Commanders are up next because they're apparently 3rd favorites for the division in the odds. They're 6-1 in the odds, but I think they could I think they're near Bears levels of incompetence this year. Frankly, no offense to Washington Commanders fans, which there's probably isn't a whole lot of them. But it's been a weird offseason for them. They've obviously had all the Dan Schneider stuff. They've had a lot of tumult in the front office and investigations and things like that, which it's been surprisingly quiet about, given how extreme the allegations were. But that's the league pushing it up, I'd imagine. What they did do is sign Carson Wentz, who is, I always kind of hoped and thought he would get back to Eagles level and be quite good again, but it just doesn't seem like it. And there's reports abound across
camp that his inaccuracies are letting people down and are bugging the coaching staff, but they've paid for him and they haven't really got a whole lot behind him. Terry McLaurin got a ton of money as well. He'll be looking for 1,000 yards, which he gets around that with poor quarterbacks. I think Wentz is probably an upgrade on what they've had before at quarterback, but again, I think time will tell on that because the reports coming out have not been even slightly positive. The running back room is messy. Antonio Gibson has not impressed so far in camp. He had a fumbling issue last year and he fumbled in week 1 of preseason. And apparently he was training with the punt team today. So I don't know whether that's just them trying to make a point, but they did draft Brian Robinson this year, who on the complete opposite side of it has been getting good reviews. And he seemed to do all right in the preseason game. Other than Terry McLaurin, there's not a whole lot in the passing game for them. Curtis Samuel is either constantly injured or has big games and little games. It depends. Obviously, it would be nice for him to get a healthy season. Logan Wilson at tight end is coming back from injury still. I'm not sure he's going to be available for week 1. And other than that, they really don't have a whole lot at wide receiver. It's it could be a really bad year for them, which I don't really think they're around Bears levels, but I don't think they're going to win 8 games, which is 7.5 is their win total. I think it's going to be worse than that. So, yeah, sorry for Washington fans. It's going to be a rough year, I think.
Yeah, not a good review if you're a Washington fan listening to that. No. But yeah, no, I agree. I see where you're coming from. I think Jahan Dotson is the other receiver, obviously first round. A lot of people, it wasn't in my top 5 receivers, but he was like 5th, 6th, 7th in a lot of people's lists. And they kind of had to overdraft him because all the receivers had already gone by their pick. So they picked him up. Offensive line's okay. There's a lot of guys that get injured a lot, which is the worry. Obviously, Trey Turner and Andrew Norwell got injured a lot the last 2 seasons. So we'll see if they're healthy. But yeah, the weapons are, I don't know, are they probably better than the Giants, maybe, in terms of weapons? But the quarterback is just horrendous. There's just no way. You just, for me, he's one of the worst. I just can't. If anyone watched that Jags game where I think they had a 91% chance of making the playoffs before that game started. And he had probably one of the worst games I've ever seen a starting quarterback have, who's actually a proven starter. So yeah, I'm not a fan of him. I think the defense is good. They didn't play well last year, but obviously Chase Young got injured. He's on the PUP at the moment, so hopefully he comes off and starts the season. Because I love him. I'm a real big fan of him. I also like Jamin Davis as well, linebacker. But it's a lot of names that are really, really good. But last year they did not play very well. So we'll see. And in terms of off the field stuff, they've also had their DC, Jack Del Rio, make some just horrendous claims as well. And that's been in the news. So I think everywhere you look with this team, there's just constant off field issues. So yeah, I think it's a weird team. I'm probably, it's not my best bet, but I think if you can get them to finish 4th in the division, I really do like that, just because I just don't know what this team is. And as much as I like Ron Rivera, I just think, the whole team probably needs to kind of restart again, apart from Terry McLaurin.
Poor Terry.
Callum?
So finished 4th in division is 15-8 for the Commanders.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, I feel sorry for Ron Rivera because I do like Ron Rivera as a coach and as a human and everything he's been through. He's a great example to a lot of people in the league. But I struggle to believe in Carson Wentz. I liked Carson Wentz at the Eagles a lot. And, I'd like to think that his revenge tour here against Philadelphia will be enjoyable to watch. But I really struggle with this team. I think they've been quite fraudulent for a couple of years now. Their defense has been very hyped up, but I think it's largely been built on the fact that they were slightly over-aggressive and got fortunate to injure a couple of opposition players that got them wins that they shouldn't have had. So I'm not big on the Commanders whatsoever. I think the name is terrible for first starters. But beyond that, I don't know enough about Dotson. I didn't watch a whole lot of Penn State, so I can't really comment on him. Terry McLaurin is obviously talented, but I've kind of been on the anti-Antonio Gibson train for a couple of years now. I'm quite happy to see that it's kind of being discovered that maybe he is not this all-seeing, all-knowing, all-doing running back that everyone seemed to think he was a couple of years ago. I just don't think they're in the same league as the Cowboys and the Eagles from a depth standpoint at all. I'm interested to see the comparison between them and the Giants. I quite like the idea of them finishing 4th in this division as well. There's nothing about this franchise that really deserves my support or passion in any way, especially with Dan Snyder still in charge. So, yeah, Commanders can get in the bin as far as I'm concerned.
We're all agreed then. Good. The Giants, on the other hand, as Liam said, easier schedule, which is a fairly decent place to start. It's a really nice one for them. They didn't pick up Daniel Jones' fifth-year option, which was the right thing to do. I think he has potential, and I'm hoping with an actual competent coaching staff that he will do something. Obviously, they brought in Brian Dable from the Bills, who was the OC at the Bills. It will be interesting to see how he does as HC, as head coach, but it's all signs are pointing positive. Apparently, it's a very wide receiver friendly scheme, and I really like Kadarius Toney. I liked what I saw in the moments when he was healthy last year, which were few and far between. There's always been off-field issues with him, and I'm hoping that now he's settled down in the league, it will help. Wan'Dale Robinson's got really good reviews all camp. It's difficult when you listen to Giants and Jets reviews because the New York media is so either overhyping or under or destroying their teams. But Wan'Dale Robinson has got good reviews. You've got him. Kenny Galladay's disappointed so far, which he has admitted himself. But he can win jump balls, he can win contested catches, and if they actually move the ball well, if they keep Saquon Barkley healthy, then apparently he's going to have a huge workload, according to the report I saw today. And he's a good runner. He's been a frustrating one, which he came from his time in college, that he will either run for 2 yards a go and then break off a 90-yarder. So it's a tough one, but he should be better this year. They have improved the offensive line. Supposedly that got better through the year last year, which is looking good. I quite like Daniel Jones. I think he's a decent enough quarterback. He's not the best passer, but he's the cut rate Josh Allen, basically. He's bargain bin Josh Allen, that he can throw the ball and he can run the ball, is basically where I'm going for that. And I think he will show a little bit this year. I like the Giants this year. I would say unashamedly, but there's a little bit of shame there. And then Sterling Shepard's there as well. They did lose Evan Ingram. He moved on as a pass catching tight end. So it'll be interesting to see how the other tight ends come through. But yeah, I think they're going to be okay this year. And Kadarius Toney's one I've been looking to pick up in drafts, and I will be looking for touchdown scorer.
Yeah, I like a lot about what the Giants are doing. I really like the changes in bringing Daboll in. I think he was, very influential in creating what the Bills have now in Buffalo. And it's kind of funny. It's what is Daniel Jones? Is he going to prove that he is a first-round caliber quarterback? I think he's been very unlucky in how little he's been protected and how lacking in some of his weapons have been. I mean, I was huge on Kenny Golladay last preseason in drafts, and I wanted to throw myself off a bridge watching him play every weekend because it was embarrassing. And as a result, I won't be touching him this year. He can't be worse than last year, but I still won't be touching him. I agree with you, Adam. I'm big on Kadarius Toney. I like Kadarius Toney a lot. But yeah, I find it hard to see the Giants being too good this season, but I definitely think you'll be able to see signs of improvement under Daboll and what they did in the draft. So I like the Giants. I like them as a franchise, and I like the way they're building. I think, it's a toss-up between them and the Commanders for third in this division. I think the value bet would be Giants to finish third and Commanders to finish last, like we said. If you wanted to go Cowboys, Eagles, Giants, Commanders, that order, bet on that exact finish. I quite like that as an idea. I'd like the Giants to be good. We'll just really have to wait and see if Daniel Jones can develop into what they need him to be, or if they're going to be back in the draft looking for a quarterback next year.
Yeah, like we said, I think with the schedule, an over bet on their win total is not out of question, because I think the schedule's easy and the coaching staff is really, really good. So we mentioned Daboll, but the DC is Wink Martindale, who's obviously with the Ravens. Someone who, his defenses are very over aggressive, and after 2-3 seasons of constant blitzing, teams often work them out. But The fact that this is a brand new kind of scheme for him in terms of the players he's got and the personnel, and quite a young defense as well. I think that he's a good coach. The OC is Mike Kafka from the Chiefs, who everyone in Kansas City really, really liked. He was kind of one of the options to replace Andy Reid whenever the sad day goes that he decides to retire. So I think the coach staff's great. Defense is relatively good. I know Kayvon Thibodeau not got the greatest camp reports and didn't play great in preseason week 1, but that's just preseason. I think he'll bounce back and be a great player. Offense, though, I'm not sure. I'm with you on the Golladay hype. I bought him in a couple of fantasy leagues last year in auction drafts. And it's not only one of the worst picks I've ever made in the draft, but it's also the worst wide receiver contract I think I've ever seen as well now when you look at the numbers of how much he gets paid this year and next year. But I like the rest of the room. Sterling Shepard's fine as a slot receiver. Wandale Robinson's really, really good. Kadarius Toney, I loved. I wanted the Chiefs to pick him. Problem with him is he's had like every injury known to man in terms of like he's out for 3 days here, 10 days here. So we'll see if he can stay healthy. Offensive line's the best they've had since they've drafted Saquon Barkley. So I think the run game will be good. I'd be buying him in any fantasy, any auction stuff, and any kind of best ball drafts as well, where you're going to get those weeks where he has that random 90-yard rushing and he has like 3 touchdowns. I think he's a good pick for that, but it all comes down to Daniel Jones. Similar to Tua as well, gets a lot of stick that he can't pass the ball. However, his accuracy down the field is really, really good as well. He was like in the top half of the league for accuracy down the field. The issue is his decision-making is just terrible and he'll just hold the ball for too long. So I think if they can get him processing a bit better like they did in Buffalo with Josh Allen, I think he'll be okay. I don't think he'll start after the season for them, but I think this season, they could shock some teams with him and those receivers as long as the O-line stays healthy. But they're okay. I think they're much better than the Commanders, but I think they've got a ways to go to be as good as the top 2 teams in this division.
Yeah, I think that Kenny Golladay is the reason that the Bengals drafted Jamar Chase, because I believe that they were in for him in free agency and didn't offer a multi-year deal. And if they got him, I think they would have taken Sewell, but they didn't. He went to the Giants and
worked out well.
Everything works out all right. Yeah. But it's he did not have a very good year. So best bets for this division, I am focusing on the Giants. I've got Saquon Barkley over 875 rush yards. It was 850 earlier in the off season on Sky Bet, and Daniel Jones over 350 rush yards. Again, Daniel Jones is a very mobile quarterback, and that is 20 yards a game. I think he's going to go over that. I mean, obviously we saw his breakaway stumble and fall last year, which could have been an extra 20 yards on top. But he ran 50 yards at full speed and he got tired. So over 350 and a half rush yards for Daniel Jones is probably my best bet of this. Callum.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's not by any means a sure thing, but I do like the Cowboys' value to win the division at 7-5. Like, I just think, I actually think whether you like Eagles or Cowboys, whichever one of those you like, I think is good value, because I think it really is a toss-up. And I think generally speaking, it could go either way. I lean Cowboys, but I think if you like the Eagles, 9-5 is really good value for the Eagles as well. I do think they will be there. I can't imagine how short Cowboys and Eagles to finish 1 and 2 in any order is. So maybe if there's a way,
I'm on it.
5 to 4.
5 to 4.
Take that. Yeah. Sorry. I'm stealing yours, Liam. But take Cowboys and Eagles 1 and 2 at 5 to 4, or even if you can find Cowboys and Eagles to both make the playoffs, which would be slightly higher than that, realistically. I think that would be a great bet as well. But
that's a good shout.
There's no way that I see either of the Giants or the Commanders competing with the Cowboys and the Eagles in the division this year.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on the top 2. If you can get request to bet in for the playoffs, like you said, or maybe to both win 10 plus games is another good one that you potentially do if you like both teams. Aside from those, I got a couple of Jalen Hurts ones. So evens, I think, for over 725.5 rushing yards. They're going to run him a lot, especially the fact that they can draft a QB next year. So they're not going to be scared to run their QB like certain teams will, just because they know that this could potentially be his last year as a starter for them. So I think he'll run the ball a lot. And then also I found, so it's 3-1 for him to score 400 passing yards in any game. He did it twice last year. And I feel like if they could be in some shootouts, there's a chance that he could have that one game where they're down 3 scores and he gets garbage time. So I think 3-1 for him to score 400 yards is a little fun bet that I've already actually placed, just because I think that he'll do it against someone like the Commanders or someone terrible, probably.
And obviously with a better offense as well this year. So that's an interesting one. Is that on the Eagles request bets, I assume?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's where I saw it.
Yeah, okay. Just one that I've just circled back on from earlier in the pod was Bills to win the division, Patriots to miss the playoffs. You can get 10-11 on that. Obviously, that's stacking a 1-2 and an 8-13, but you wouldn't be able to accumulate that yourself. So not terrible. Near evens for something that we believe is a very good chance.
Callum's betting it as we speak, getting the VPN going.
Yeah, honestly, I like that a lot. I really like that.
Yeah. Right. So I think we are pretty much done for the show. Just over an hour, so half hour each. I'm good with that. Gents, thank you. Where can we find you all on Twitter?
Just at Callum JD Squires on Twitter and Instagram. A little plug for my Desert Island Goals podcast as well, which hopefully we'll get both of you on in the future as well as guests. At DI Goals Pod on Twitter and at desert.island.goals on Instagram. If you want to hear more about the other football, head there. But thanks for having me. Always good to chat and appreciate it.
Yes, at _ Liam Horsley for me. I've got another podcast, NFL one, called at Go for Two Pod, and I'm actually, my co-host is an Eagles fan, so we are very close to previewing this division with him. So we'll see how biased he gets in that. Normally, he's very anti-Cowboys and quite neutral on the Eagles because he doesn't want to get his hopes up. But we'll see how much he slates Joe Jones in that episode, probably next week. So go over there if you want to listen to any more division previews as well.
Tell him to listen to the FC North preview where I was perfectly respectable about the Steelers last week, and he can learn from the level of professionalism I exuded.
Nice.
Right, thank you very much, guys. We will be back next week with the AFC and NFC South roundup, which probably isn't going to be quite as exciting as these ones. They seem fairly tied up already, but Thank you for listening, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.